Welcome to the Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast, a show created to help painting company owners build a thriving painting business that does well over $1 million in annual revenue. I'm your host, Brandon Pierpont, founder of Painter Marketing Pros and creator of the popular PCA educational series, Learn, Do, Grow, Marketing for Painters. In each episode, I'll be sharing proven tips, strategies, and processes from leading experts in the industry on how they found success in their painting business. We will be interviewing owners of the most successful painting companies in North America and learning from their experiences. In this series titled Success Looks Different, Shane Fast of Renew Painting will be discussing his surprising journey from ministry to painting and the many lives he has impacted, lessons he's learned, and counterintuitive approach he has taken along the way. It is a 6-part series. In episode 1, Shane discussed his unlikely path to painting and his bold vision for the future. In episode 2, Shane covered the initial hurdles he faced, both personally and professionally, and how he overcame them. In episode 3, this episode, Shane will dive into his decision to professionalize and scale and the action steps that allowed him to do so. In episode 4, Shane will lay out Renew Painting's core values and how those impact every aspect of the business. In episode 5, Shane will walk through his counterintuitive approach to hiring and sales and the hedgehog and flywheel his business runs by. And in episode 6, the final episode, Shane will break down his transition to a hybrid model as well as his vision for the future of Renew Painting. If you want to ask Shane questions related to anything in this podcast series, you can do so in our exclusive Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast forum on Facebook. Just search for Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast forum on Facebook and request to join the group. Or type in the URL facebook.com/groups/Painter Marketing Mastermind. Again, that URL is facebook.com/groups/Painter Marketing Mastermind. There you can ask Shane questions directly by tagging him with your question so you can see how anything discussed here applies to your particular painting company. What's up, man?
Hey, brother. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. We are back in action. We have dove pretty deep into a lot of stuff, some emotional stuff, some mental stuff. It is a mental game, the game of business. We did establish that it is a game, so that's good. And I think now we're going to get into some tactical moves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you kind of went through the roller coaster that got you to the painting company. You fought it a little bit, fought it tooth and nail a little bit, but ultimately came to the conclusion, hey, this is the right move. It actually makes sense. It's actually pretty logical based on my family tree. And I think that I might be good at this, naturally prone to some of this stuff, this craftsmanship plus business. And now you've decided, hey, I'm going to double down, triple down on this thing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it well. I'm going to take it seriously. Now I need to professionalize. Now I need to actually get my ducks in a row so I can scale this business and treat it like a true venture. What did you do?
Yeah, well, there's a host of things. And I just kind of jotted down a list and we can just kind of, just want to run it out. And I was even trying to think of what's the most important. And it might sound cliche for anybody that's exposed to the PCA and some of those circles that have professionalized companies. But, I think job costing was probably the first professionalization step. And honestly, it's probably the easiest. It's as simple as asking somebody else to borrow a spreadsheet and start using it, And so, that's what all of us do. We borrow it from somebody else and we adapt it and make it our own. And I think, I referenced yesterday, not yet, the last time we talked, I referenced stepping away, what did I say? 8 hours a week, no more than 4 hours at a time. We talked about that advice and having to make that. That was
rule for you.
That was kind of that's the rule that was suggested to me. So I had to self-impose. And if I didn't have job costing, I would only have feelings to feel like, hey, maybe that worked. But with job costing, I could see, we were already job costing before that. I could see, hey, this is actually really helpful and I can show you why. And so, job costing really tells a story and gives you data to then support your feelings or oppose your feelings. There's times when we think, man, what happened on this job? They were so slow, we're so behind. And then you actually run the numbers out and you think, oh, we're actually in a great spot. We're actually killing it. And there's other times it's a total opposite happens. And I think we've killed something, we get to the end of it and cost it. And I'm like, holy crap, that sucked. What did we do wrong? And that informs production and that informs sales. So that gives you, was it a production problem? Was it a sales problem? Was it, sometimes there's customers that are hard to in challenging situations and hard to deal with. And so, you can really start to diagnose that. So I think that job costing is a key data point. Otherwise, you're kind of running through the ocean without a compass in a sense,
Yeah.
You're just kind of going and hoping you get to a certain spot. And I think that's how most people probably end up not profitable, doing a lot of revenue, but not profitable.
Yeah.
Um, and so that one's the easiest low hanging fruit there is to me.
Yeah. John Wooden had a quote, don't mistake activity for achievement, or
Yeah,
maybe never mistake activity for achievement. And so I think it's easy to kind of get in this cycle of doing a bunch of stuff where we feel really busy. We're not getting on projects. And so, well, the business is growing or must be growing. Maybe we don't even know the revenue, right? Sometimes it's that bad where you're not actually sure what your revenue is year to date or month to date. And so but the business is growing. And so therefore we must be doing well. But it's really
right,
not about the revenue. If we're looking at it from a financial standpoint, it would really be what you keep, not what you make. Um,
correct.
and at the end of the day, if you're looking at it from a life impact perspective, hey, I want to impact a lot of lives through serving more clients, through hiring more people, you have to have a strong financial base to be able to support that.
Yes, yeah, I 100% agree. 100% agree.
So what would be, if somebody's listening, and I know job costing, if you've been to PCA events, if you've kind of listened to a lot of these podcasts or followed some coaches, job costing is a pretty frequent topic. But let's say someone's listening and maybe this is their first time hearing it, or they just haven't actually acted on it and they've heard it before. How could someone who's listening to this start job costing?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have spreadsheets. A ton of people have them. And I mean, literally, you're just trying to take the labor you spent on a job, subtract out the materials, and well, basically revenue. So if the job was $1,000 job, and I paid $200 in labor and $100 for materials, and there's $700 left over. So that's our gross profit, right? And then if you want to really get one level, which our gross profit number is really big, and our revenue per hour number is pretty big to us. And that because we quote, essentially we've got labor rates, but we're basing it off of an hourly rate. And so, square foot of a ceiling is derived from we want to get X number of dollars per hour for our labor to paint that ceiling, right? And and so you can just take that left, whatever that $700 is left over, and then you put your number of hours into it, and you've got your revenue per hour. So is it $50? Is it $60? Is it $70? Which of course depends on how many hours you actually spent on it. And so we're assuming, and me saying that like it's so simple. I mean, for me, when I started doing it, it was me and four painters, and so it was a lot of work. It was on my plate.
Yeah.
And so I realized that's a lot to keep up with, and it's hard to be on top of it consistently. But there's a huge impact if you are, if you can take the time and commit to that. So I realize it's work. You've got to be able to find that data. You got to be able to know how many hours people are actually there and what their labor rates are and some of those things. But it's totally worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that there are spreadsheets available. Someone could, if you comment in the Facebook group, tag Shane, tag myself, you can get one of those spreadsheets. And that's kind of the starting point. But at the end of the day, this is one of them. It's one of the more basic, but also one of the most important aspects of getting your finances right and professionalizing your business is knowing your numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now you sound like Chris Moore. The
I mean, a lot of this stuff, man, it's not rocket science, right? So
It's
so
not.
Chris, Jason Phillips, Brandon Lewis, me, a
Yep.
lot of us are going to say kind of the same things because at the end of the day, fundamentals work. The
Yeah.
fundamentals is how
I
you
heard
win
all
this
those
game.
other guys say the same. Yeah, exact same things, numbers, culture. Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone, and I digress, kind of go on a soapbox for a second or whatever, but I'm in marketing. Marketing, we naturally like innovative approaches, right? We're working on some SMS stuff. We're working on some AI appointment setting type stuff. Some of the stuff that's sort of sexier. But at the end of the day, it's the fundamentals. And I think so many people want to chase that. Hey, what's the most innovative, sexy way to get leads? If you can just get leads at a reasonable cost per lead, you can sell that lead the right way. Getting in touch with them immediately through a CRM, having the right messaging, having a strong dialed-in sales process, delivering the proposal in the home, not emailing it afterwards, having a objection handling process. If you can just do these fundamentals, having a what we call database reactivation, basically reaching out to your past lists and having a proactive approach to repeat and referral business. You just do those fundamentals right. You don't have to know everything about AI. You don't have to be on the cutting edge, and you'll be beating 99% of the other painters out there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It makes total sense.
Okay, so we have data, job costing. What's number two here for us?
Yeah. So I think another big one for us was systems and software, which kind of tags right into what you just
Yeah.
said. And, as a small company doing 300 something $1,000 a year, all of a sudden paying $3,000 a year for software. Like, I think we started off with Jobber at first, or Estimate
It's like
Rocket.
10% of your revenue going to software right there,
So it feels like, well, would it be
right?
1%,
Is it
but
you're at 375 and you're paying 3 grand a month?
three
Am
a year,
am I
three
off?
a year, 3 year,
Oh,
3 year,
three a year.
three a
Got it.
year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
No,
Got it.
no. Sorry. Yeah.
I was like,
So
man, that's heavy
I was like,
software.
I said something wrong because I know, like, yeah, I got a funny story one time where I was like, yeah, I paid 50 cent a square foot for this house. And the guy's like, you mean $50? Oh yeah, that would make a lot more sense. I was so proud. I was like, yeah, that's the number, not 50 cents. Anyway, so yeah, so like you said, there's a sense in which you look professional, you are professional, right?
Yeah,
So there was nothing, I mean, it's admirable for me to come in and handwrite a bid and to hand it to somebody on a nice sheet of paper, or to then type an email and send it to them. That's a step, it's
sure.
much more advanced than taking a business card and turn it on the back, right?
Oh, God.
So, or just texting them something. I mean, so there's not it's not to denigrate those things. That's where most of us start, but there's something that is, use the word sexy a minute ago. When we use Paint Scout now. And so when I show our proposal to homeowners, the feedback we get is like, wow, that's like really, that looks really impressive. Even people that don't hire us sometimes are like, wow, that proposal is awesome. It tells about your company, and so, but those things aren't free. And so I've had to, I grew up in just a middle-class family. And I kind of watched my parents do well in some things and spend money on some things I thought were kind of wasteful for the money we didn't have, and then do some things wisely, and just kind of like picked up on that and learned from it. They also made us earn our own money and spend our own money at a young age. And so I've always been pretty frugal. And so the thought of like actually spending money on software was like, wow, I can do this myself. I don't need that,
Sure.
And so actually investing in systems and software to where now we realized about a year and change ago, when somebody said, yeah, when you get to that $1 million plus mark a year in revenue, you're not going to be able to just have one software that does everything. You're going to have a stack. And I was
Right.
like, are you kidding me? But by that point, I was like, okay, let's build our stack. Let's figure this out, because I had realized the value in investing in the software. And so it is a mental hurdle to say, okay, if we spend this money, are we going to get it back?
Right.
And we do. We totally do. In droves with our time, from the CRM to the estimating to the project management, all like the whole nine. We get that money back through saving a ton of time, looking much more professionalized, so that when we schedule them for a quote 24 hours before, they're getting a text, hey, we're confirming your appointment. Here's a video of what to expect on the quote. It's a 45-second video of me talking. None of that happens without paying for the software.
Yeah.
And that was a huge one. That was a huge hurdle for me to get over initially, spending that
Sure.
money.
I'm glad you brought that up because if you actually think about it, so it's $3,000. It's a lot of money, right? Especially when you're kind of early on. You think, man, I could just keep that 3,000. Maybe that'll cover my mortgage, right?
Yep.
Why would I put it into this software? But if you actually think about it from a business perspective, if you look more professional, it's $3,000 a year. There is almost no way that you're not gonna like 10x,
Yes.
100x plus your ROI on that investment. Like one landed project because it looked more professional, or even just a higher ticket price, being able to sell a higher profit margin, just covers it.
Yes. Which again, to your point about selling, quoting on the spot, presenting on the spot, going through the objections right then, you don't do that without software. You
Yeah.
know, you just don't. You can't present it to them in a way they can walk away with it and and you can dialogue right then.
I
So
think
even
we
that,
sell, and I mean, I did this for a long time at Painter Marketing Pros. We kind of sell speaking our own language, So I would get on calls back when I was running the sales process, and I might pull up their rankings on Google. and I'm going to kind of talk about their SEO, and I'm going to talk about why it is what it is, and I'm going to start to get into jargon and technicality. At the end of the day, they don't know what I'm talking about, and they don't care, right? And so I started going on this path, and I think I see a lot of contractors do that, where they go in, take the measurements, kind of, talk technically about all the different things they're going to do and why it matters. Homeowner doesn't really care. And so if you're not providing them stuff, if you're not speaking in their language, if you're not giving them a packet that they can look at, read, get comfortable with your company, start to know, like, and trust you. If they haven't gotten some messaging before, like you send that 45-second video about the process, now I know what to expect. Now I know what you look like. Now when you walk
Mhm.
in the door, you're not a stranger to me anymore. If you don't do that stuff in your head, you might be like, oh, I gave them all the information. They have everything. I don't know why they went with Chuck. In their head, you were you were talking Chinese the whole time, and you threw out a number, but you weren't really connecting with them in a way that was significant for them.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
know,
think, I mean, and that's a whole, yeah, we could get on a whole, rabbit trail of
you
sales
do a
and how,
10-hour thing on this, man. Sales.
which is honestly a huge part of, I mean, that's an anchor, right? Like that in production and operations. Those are your three anchors. Um, and so that has been another thing that for me, some kind of, entrepreneurs in our space are start out as I love the craft, and they might be bent more toward being a phenomenal project manager. So their first hire might be a salesperson, and they go do the project management. That is not me. The only job that I could potentially have gotten besides the one I have now is a salesperson, in terms of like what I could go after and be successful at. And so, that's been something that I'm continually learning. Is I haven't hired a full-time salesperson yet. I've trained some other people on our team to be able to fill in gaps when I'm out of town or when we just have too many leads. But I'm still learning. There's that, Hannah said, I called our office manager before this call, and asked her the question that we are going to talk about. Said, hey, give me your list. I've got my list. Give me yours. I'm
Mm.
curious. And the first thing she said was systems. And so I would say my sales system is still lagging behind where it should be for the size company we are, partly because I can just do it instinctively. But that's not teachable. That's not trainable.
Right.
So in order to scale, you have to have systems that you can hand off. So we have to have an SOP for project management, so I can hire a project manager and teach them and unload that responsibility, right? For example, so with software comes systems. They kind of go hand in hand. They're not married to each other, but I guess they're like first cousins or brothers and sisters or something. They're pretty inseparable.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
that's an awesome point. And it is so easy to not build your company to be able to actually hire people to be able to make this stuff scalable because you know how to do it. So
right,
you don't necessarily need to document it or make it transferable, but if you want to scale your business, part of professionalizing it, even if you plan to continue doing it, what if Nick Slavic has a turkey trot or the turkey truck test, right? If you get hit by the turkey truck, does your business keep running or not?
right,
So even if you're, hey, I love sales, I only want to go to this certain revenue range within the company. I don't necessarily want to hire another estimator. So I'm going to just continue to conduct it. So I don't really have to record that. Well, then you get in a car accident, God forbid, or something. You get some sort of sickness. Well, now, hopefully you did record it. Hopefully you do have a process, especially if you have a family, because you're going to need someone to plug in there.
right. Yeah. I mean, and gosh, don't you want to be able to go on vacation and not have a call like every hour, or every, just to be able to actually detach and feel like my people are thriving because they're equipped,
For
even if
sure.
it's, yeah, even if it's not Hannah's normal role is not a salesperson. There's nothing in her disc profile that would ever say send her on a sales call, but what we've done is
Highly
taught her.
introverted.
Yeah, I mean, so we taught her how to do it so that she can do it when I'm gone. She can, or when it's just, everybody's pulled thin, she can, hey, I can pick that one up,
Yeah,
and the main hurdle is really how technical is the painting side of it. She has no industry experience at all. So as long as it's not too technical and crazy, just a house, wall, ceiling, and trim, it could be a 10,000 square foot or 1,000, and she can do it, and it's because of the systems. And so I think that's huge. Another thing you just touched on was the org chart. So writing an org chart, which is honestly somewhat defeating as a small company because you're in every spot.
it's a
You're
little
lucky.
depressing. Admin,
Yeah, if you're
me.
lucky, you
Estimator,
might have,
me. Project
yeah,
manager, me. Painter, me.
right. If you're lucky, you got a few other people on it, but you're most of the roles,
Yeah.
you know. And but in doing that, and I would do it. And then I wouldn't do a whole lot with it, and I'd do it again. And it's just the writing of it every few months for a little while kept me dreaming a little bit, you know.
Mm.
Not that I didn't have a way to hire somebody right away. I knew we didn't have the revenue to support it. You know, you gotta, and when you write an org chart, when you're $300,000 to $400,000, you're not, like you said, you're pretty much everything, you know,
Yeah.
but you've got a couple extra painters. And so then you start to dream a little bit about, you know, well, what things do I not really love doing, and I'm probably not the best at doing. I can hand those off. And what's the lowest, you know, how do I actually get there income wise? What's the threshold to be able to hire an office, you know, maybe it's an office assistant for 20 hours a week, you know, whatever the first step is, which was kind of our first. And Hannah, one thing she mentioned, she said, you might not want to, you know, say this, but it was just, you know, it's not arrogant, because I have said, uh, on the last couple episodes that I had a ton to learn about leadership failures and everything, you know, and I feel like I'm a different leader now than I used to be. And she said, you know, you entrust other people to do their role. You actually entrust them and empower them to do their role. And that's huge. And so it's not just having an org chart, and then once you start to fill it with people, just, you know, still micromanaging all that. I think it's, can our people fly? You know, my role is not to be a babysitter, to be a micromanager. I want to empower them to go and to really take off, because
Yeah.
they win, I win, we win together. You know, it's a win all around. And I think there are a lot of us who start the business that have a hard time with that, because we're used to being that person, and we're used to being the people that are on the Google review saying, "Oh yeah, Shane showed up my house and did a great job." My name hasn't been on a Google review in like 2 years,
Isn't that
you know.
awesome?
But I love seeing, you know, Pedro, Vivi, Ryan, Hannah, Nate. You know, I mean, you're seeing all these other people named and celebrated, and it's so fun. You know, we're actually real now. It feels like, hey, we're a real
Yeah.
company. You know, and I think so. I think writing that org chart out, being okay with being in multiple spots. I'm still in multiple spots. You know, our trajectory now is somewhere between 1.5 million and 2 this year. It kind of depends on how, you know, the rest of the year goes. So we're still not a massive company by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm still filling in a couple spots. And as I develop some other people, we're kind of sharing some of those together. And, you know, it's a growth process, but writing that out gives clarity to your team as well. It gives it clarity to you about what you're looking for and what you're dreaming about and how to
Yeah.
get there, and somewhat informs that roadmap. And then it gives clarity to your team too about, hey, here's where I want you to go, and here's where I want you to move into and to thrive.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's been a big thing for us.
Yeah, the org chart's huge because it does essentially create the roadmap for you for your business. You know, as you scale, it's so easy to not even necessarily differentiate the roles because you
Yeah,
just
for
you
sure.
go and you deliver the proposal, and then hopefully you follow up, and hopefully you get the project. When you get the project, you're going to make sure it goes according to plan and kind of monitor the painter. Okay, well now you're doing the project management role, but in your mind it might not even be differentiated. You're just kind of running everything. And if you don't clearly separate that and not, have the org chart, but then the responsibilities listed under the org chart and what you would actually compensate someone in that role, and whether there would be a commission portion or not. And so I'd like, at what revenue range would you be comfortable hiring somebody there? And if you're painting, listing yourself as a painter, how much would you pay someone to replace yourself? So now you're actually building that into your profit margin. And it goes back to, again, knowing your numbers, job costing. You're not free. And that's another mistake so many owners make
Right.
when they're small is they go paint and then they say their profit margin, but they're not counting themselves as a painter that they need to pay. So now when you
Right.
replace yourself, your profit margin is all of a sudden going to take a dive.
Yeah, that is a good point. On job costing, you absolutely have to account for yourself if you're on site. Either if you're acting as a project manager, you have to step in and do touch ups or help clean up or something. Those are hours. If you're
Yeah.
if you're owner operator and you're jumping in with a team of three and you're working as a painter and a project manager on that site, then your painting hours absolutely are a part of that. You know, and that
Yeah.
and that is too often missed.
And if you're doing the sales and if there's going to be a commission piece, then you got to, okay, when I'm not doing this anymore, then we're going to have to pay commission.
Yeah, and believe me, I thought about that one. I'm like, I thought I'll be great to hire sales, but I won't make as much money at our current size if I do, you know. But that's not, I mean, that's not going to keep me
Sometimes
from.
you take a step back I mean, sometimes as you scale, you do start to make
uh,
less money temporarily.
That's right. Somebody explained this to a friend in real estate, explained to me as a check mark. So, you know, go down a little bit to go up a
Mm,
lot higher, you know. And
yeah.
there's all different analogies and visualizations for that. But yeah, absolutely. And I would say that's another thing in scaling that I've had to really embrace and celebrate. is those kind of temporarily downward movements, whether like, and usually you feel it in terms of revenue. The first time we got an office space, for example, had no clue how invigorating that was going to be for our team to have a 9 by 9 office where three of us share it most of the time. But it was our own space all of a sudden. We weren't hopping around coffee shops and Paneras and libraries and whatever it was, and so, but it was an immediate like financial cost
Sure.
that had huge dividends, huge dividends. So there's always going to be those little, where can I invest in our team? Where can I do something small and reasonable and it's going to pay a lot of dividends? And everybody knows their own team pretty well. You can find those different spots.
Yeah, I like that check mark analogy. I've not heard of that before. That's a
Yeah,
good.
I thought it was really cool. I'm so visual. It's like I can see that. So I literally will think about that in certain moments. I'm like, okay, this is what this decision. We just hired a second project manager. We're a little, we're right on that cusp, but we're doing a little bit early. But it's intentional, and because of the vision where I see us going, and I know in the short run, it's like I could have gotten away with not having another van. I could have gotten away with not having another salary for this. But to your point earlier about the org chart and just I mean, everybody's wired differently. I, I, I don't think multitasking exists, period.
There's
I
not.
just, it is a computer term to start with. That's where it originated, right? So it's not even meant for humans. And so today I've started 2 jobs, one with a W-2, one with a sub. I've ordered paint. I have So thing I did besides like working out and getting my kids off to school. So you
Most
start
important things,
so so you
as we
start off as a
talked about.
parent, taking the puppy out to pee and poop, right? Like you start off as a parent, and and then you move into work mode. And what was it? I had to do some. I've been working on quotes, so there's that part. Fielding calls about other jobs, because we're at a size where I've still got to manage some of our projects. I've got a 22-year-old, almost 23, who's doing great, but he's only been in project management since January, only been in the industry since August. So I can't dump $1.8 million on him and say, go
Yeah,
manage it. That's crazy. And so we're trying to keep him at a certain threshold. He and I manage some together, and he has a lot on his own, some together, and then some I might just take, depending on, we make it based on different factors. But my gosh, it's going to be so nice to have this other project manager on, because that in 2 months will take me largely out of that role entirely.
yeah,
And because I mean, Brandon, I kid you not, I spent the 10 minutes before we got on this podcast laying down on the outdoor couch with my eyes closed, just listening to the birds because my head was so cluttered.
yeah,
And I'm just so thankful that that's not my everyday anymore. I mean, that's hard. So I remember being in that spot every day where you're trying to juggle all those different things. It's really hard, really
yeah,
hard. So hard to get your brain just to stop and just pause and kind of, let me just back up and think and dream a little bit.
for sure.
That's another argument for starting to fill that org chart out. Take a little risk financially maybe to help yourself out too.
Yeah, as the leader of the company, being the visionary is really the most important thing you can do. Being the visionary and being the leader of the organization. And so the like you laying on the couch, I mean it can almost feel negligent sometimes. Like if like we'll have strategy sessions. So we have a director of operations, we have a technical director, and they're both I work pretty closely with them. And we'll have these 4-hour meetings where all we're doing is strategizing about the future of Painter Marketing Pros and kind of the vision and what can we transform into, how can we become the
Mhm.
best marketing agency in the world. Things of which could seem kind of like, well, why aren't you guys just driving forward on the tasks that you have right now? But it's the most important thing you can do is
Yep.
think about your organization from a top level and actually carve that time aside. If you're just running all the different positions, you'll never get there. And there was
Correct.
there's there's a mentor of mine who's just wildly successful. He's this entrepreneur in France. He knows Emmanuel Macron. Like the guy is just like ultra, has his private jet, and he actually, I mean, it's pretty wild. He tried to get like he was almost assassinated by like the Taliban because he's from Israel originally. He's like ultra successful entrepreneur, so it would have been this huge PR thing if they had been able. So just like a wild guy, hugely successful, and he took a lot of risks. And so I didn't really know what do you mean taking risks? And so I actually went and shadowed him. He has his own like private equity office in Paris, and I went and shadowed him for a week. And sat down and had a lunch with the guy, a guy like that. I mean, that's priceless. And
Oh,
so I
no
talked
doubt.
to him and I was like, what do you mean risk? Like your team's been saying you're willing to take risks. You've said you're willing to take risks. I don't really understand what you're saying. And so an example he gave me is that, okay, if you're growing a company and you would maybe be in a financial position to, let's say, hire a salesperson next year, he's going to hire that person now.
Hmm.
And so that's what that like you said, taking a little bit of financial risk. He will see the vision of where he wants to take the company, and then he will pull those actions forward like a year plus, and he'll go ahead and make the investment now, betting that he'll go ahead and ramp up quickly enough to make that make sense. And that's how he essentially has compressed time. So
No, I love that.
food for
I mean,
thought.
I think that's real and it's very logical. Can we always do it? No, no, there are realities and numbers, right? But at the
I mean,
same
you want to
time,
be caught. It depends on your responsibilities too, right? Like if you're putting
yeah,
food on the table for your kids, you might want to factor that in. If you have a mortgage, you might want to factor that in. If you're younger, or if you've already got your necessities kind of met,
yeah,
maybe we take some moonshots because
yeah.
maybe
Or if
maybe it's
it's,
okay.
oh, well, I might make, let's just use really round numbers, say, well, I can make 100 this year, or if I take this risk, I might make 70. Can I live on the 70?
Sure,
And yield the 30 for this year to make another 80 next year, whatever, to
for
go from
sure.
100 to 150, 100, whatever it is, right? And so yeah, that's typically how, thankfully we're at a place now where I feel as if, okay, our needs as a family are going to be covered.
Yeah,
We've been blessed to kind of the live-in flips of a couple houses. We're in a great equity spot on this one now because of that, so we've, our bills might be lower than expected. Maybe we got 3 kids, so we still have a lot of bills.
it's very
Um,
expensive, man.
man, in college in 3 years, it's going to get interesting.
Be
Um,
easy for you, right? Easy street. Put them all through college.
woo, gosh, no, just come work for us. Don't go to college. Just come.
That's right.
Oh man. Where'd I go? Yeah. To say, hey, can we? What is reasonable for our family? What takes care of our family? And maybe for a season, how lean can that be to hire that PM, to hire the salesperson? To your point, our goal is to hire a salesperson in the second half of this year, probably again a few $100,000 before we should or before we need to.
Love it.
But I just look at it as buying my time back to get into that dreaming space.
Yeah.
Like you said, that visionary, kind of creative, entrepreneurial side of what can we go after next, and where do we need to kind of grow and actually pull back and have the space to do that versus being, if I start doing, 15 quotes a week, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have space. So I can't be the full-time salesperson and do the other.
And there have been a lot of studies of ultra successful people, people who've created a lot of wealth versus other people. And what are kind of the principles that they live by that are different? And one of the primary principles is what you just said, buying back your time. And so I don't actually think personally I've been good enough about that. Like, am I cleaning the house? Am I doing something that I should have outsourced a long time ago because I could be doing something else that ultimately is going to drive a lot more revenue? And I think this will be applied sometimes to people who have like a W-2 position. And I don't think it necessarily works in that example because if you have a set number of hours or your salary
Yes.
for the year, you say, well, I make 80 grand a year. And if I divide that by the number of hours I work, so therefore I shouldn't mow the lawn. But if your income is fixed and you mowing the lawn or not mowing the lawn doesn't change your income,
Right.
to me, it's like maybe you should mow the lawn. It depends on your expense and what you want to do with your life. But as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you shouldn't mow the lawn because you should be
Right.
thinking, you should be being a visionary for your business because you'll get a lot more money.
Yes. Yeah. The only caveat I found to any of that, and I have not mowed my lawn, but like 3 times since we've been here. But just because of that exact reason, I said, hey, this is a really good deal on cutting grass. I could either go buy a riding mower or whatever, or I could just pay this person and go get it and build a business, which is what I chose to
Yep.
do. Which now, when I was in ministry, I would have never done. I always cut my own grass. The yard
Yep.
was a lot smaller. That helped a lot.
Sure.
But it was good to see something finished. So sometimes as entrepreneurs, we might feel like we don't actually see anything finished. So
Mhm.
for some people, that can check that box. There's many other ways to get to that. For other people, cutting the lawn is they love it, you know? So
Therapeutic.
I would say there's some things that I still do that you can look at and say, why do you do that? But I just get so much joy in it, you know? Every now and then I'll wash a car. It probably doesn't make any sense for me to wash a car. You can go drive through one for $18 now or whatever it is, you know? But it reminds me of like my grandfather teaching me that, you know, it's fun every once in a while, not like super
Doing it
regular.
because you want to do it, not doing it because you're unwilling to pay the $18.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. You know, and so where are those kind of, you know, everybody has those unique pockets, but it's being willing to buy back your time where it makes the most sense to buy it back. I think that's huge, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm gonna shoot our next podcast with Russell Peach. A friend of mine runs Peach Painting, highly successful painting business in Tampa, and he actually has I think he has a barber come to his shop and like cut his hair in the shop so he doesn't have to spend the time, going to the barber shop. Which for him he likes that. But it's an example of a lot of people might kind of balk at that or like, why don't you just go to the barber shop? But he's running a $7-8 million company. So
Yeah.
maybe, the maybe going to the barber shop, waiting in the line, that probably actually doesn't make any financial sense for him.
Yeah. Fair point.
I love
Yeah.
it. Plus, it's just a boss move. I've never done it, but that's just a
I
boss
know.
move.
That's what I was thinking you're saying. It's just awesome.
It's just awesome. Exactly. Who cares about the cost savings or buying the time? It's just a cool thing.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, so we have job costing, step one, knowing your numbers and your gross profit margin. We have systems and software. So that, yeah, you have to use the software. Those kind of go hand in hand, sister, brother, cousins, whatever it is. Having systems, and then the software is actually going to make that scalable and repeatable and something that's not overly burdensome. And then an org chart. So filling out all the positions,
Right.
giving us a roadmap, even if it's just us doing everything right now, at least now we got it on paper. We know the jobs that are being done, ultimately kind of where we need to get to financially to maybe start outsourcing and have a plan. What's next?
Well, if you're gonna have an org chart and you want to build it, you got to hire people. You know, so I think that's an extremely important part. And I think the biggest lesson that I've learned with that is, yeah, I'm trying to remember the cliche, hire slow and fire fast, I think. And but it's really true, you know. And I am not anymore, but for a long time was just notorious for just we'll figure it out. We're gonna make this work. We're gonna figure this out with this person. We're gonna make it work. You know, and you keep saying that over and over and over until you finally realize this just isn't gonna work.
Yeah,
But yeah, we keep trying, you know, and so it's having good systems, so a good firm process for people to to step through and a process for them to go through. And I realize that there's a tension between we really want people, so we have to make it easy. But if it's too easy, then are those the kind of people we want? You know, so we have something in between, you know, to
yeah,
where they have to take a couple steps to kind of get through. And it's amazing how people self-select out so fast, so fast. You know, you can't. I think I don't know if we have a post up right now because we're not actively trying to hire for a painter, but we used to, I guess it was Indeed. And so they'd message on Indeed and it bounced back, say, hey, thanks for, messaging, like click here to fill out the application. Or maybe that was an even softer first landing. I can't remember exactly what it was at this point. We calibrated a year ago. We ran it for a number of months. We hired what we need to hire, then we paused it. So we haven't, done that in a while. But it it was amazing who just wouldn't do the first small step.
the drop off is
Oh
wild.
man. Now
Wild.
we yielded a little bit to this generation and culture and said, okay, we'll follow up with you via text twice. We're not going to do it more than that. Hey,
Yeah,
did you get a chance to fill out the application? What we learned in that was a lot of people don't see their emails, so that text got a lot more response than email. But if you're sending that text more than twice, then do you want that person?
yeah,
And so I think creating um a structure, a flow, a progression, I guess is the best word of hiring. Somebody has to walk through this progression to get to be a part of your team. Is going to be, you have to do some level of that to protect who you are,
for sure.
to make sure you're hiring who you want to hire. And when you make a mistake, I remember last year, we thought we knocked it out of the park on this guy. Young kid, 20 years old, everything just seemed right. His assessments were right. Everything looked great. His interview was great. And he starts working, and in 2 days, our team's like, what, like, yeah, I can't remember all the examples, but there was not a lot of praise for him, for lack of a better word. So our project manager talks to him. Here's a couple of things that we need you to work on right away. 2 days later, she said, "Can I please just fire this guy?"
That's fast.
Like, that's great. I don't have to come do it. Go
Yeah.
ahead. You get a text later that day, says player eliminated. I'm like, what? And she's like, fired him, Shane. That's what I'm talking about. I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good
Player
way.
eliminated.
Player eliminated. There's a game. There you go. No.
Yeah.
But we don't talk that flippantly about people's careers, obviously. But this guy, it kind of fit. The joke fit in that situation, because it was like this
Two
kid.
days, I gotta assume it wasn't going well.
Oh man, he was not at all. It's just, so that's another thing to be willing to say, I just had to do it with. I was so excited about this role we created to manage our relationships with a couple key renovation companies in our area that we do a lot of work for. And those projects are just they're way harder to navigate than a homeowner. And so I thought, I'm going to hire somebody to quote those and produce those. And that's all he's going to do. And I was super excited about this person we hired. Well, we, 4 or 5 days into it, Hannah and I turned to each other like, what do we miss?
Yeah.
How did we screw this up? And so we had to autopsy our process and realize, oh, here's where we really screwed it up, and let's not do that again. But we also had to be willing to admit, man, we failed on that one.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we fell forward. We just failed. And so to be willing to admit that failure and just say, okay, we got to let him go. Let's move on to the next thing and figure it out. I
Some
think
people are
that,
very good at interviewing. I feel like they're like professional interviewers, probably because they're so poor at their job. They get a lot of practice interviewing.
man, I mean, and if shame on us for interviewing somebody that has the sales skills. I mean, he just sold us,
Yeah.
and so, some way it was like, shame on us for being swooned, or whatever the word is. But yeah, I think that's developing a system that works for you, that's not too labor intensive. As a small company, you can only be so labor intensive, and you can only give so much time to it. And so you got to find that right balance, and then being willing to say, man, screwed that one up, and letting the person go.
Yeah.
Most states have a certain limit or threshold of where if you don't pay them over a certain amount, you don't have to, and they file unemployment, it's not going to you, it's going to the previous employer. And so we actually studied that pretty quick too.
Yeah. Yeah. You do need to know the
That kind of gives
people.
us like, okay, they got about a month before we really see, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. For us, we'll like for an account manager position or something like that, we'll basically have a training program, and then kind of like a mock, the mock doing the role. I find, and as much as possible, we actually do that in the interview process. So like we
Mm,
hired a web developer. We took one of our more challenging websites, basically gave the homepage and said, "Hey, build it, and you have 24 hours to build this." And so just whatever software, just get us this page, and it's got to be identical.
mm,
And so many people come through and say, "Well, I need a sandbox, which is like a web development area." If you ask that, if you ask any kind of thing, then you're not the right person. And then someone came through, didn't ask any questions, said, "Okay, great, got it," returned it 12 hours later, it was perfect. That person's been a phenomenal web developer for us. So the more you can kind of figure out what the job is, and then just have them do the job in the interview process, and then vet them in a way, once they're kind of like hired, and you're training and you're onboarding them, vet them in a way where if they mess up or they're not the right person, you don't sit there and have them in front of a client or have them, creating actual damage for your company, the better.
yeah, I love that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a really cool hack you found there to discern that.
Yeah, I mean, because we hire pretty specialized positions. We have a lot of departments, and usually what people are doing is pretty specialized. So it's just like if they can do their job before you hire them to do their job, just see if they can do the job.
Hmm.
But some of this stuff, cultural fit, attitude, how hungry they are, you can get sold on that, and then realize that was not accurate. Your assessment of them was inaccurate.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
you're
just
absolutely right. So, yeah, lengthening that interview process for your key positions, I think, is really important. Group interviews are really important.
yeah,
Ride-alongs are really important. And those are all things that we shifted. Boom. All right, we failed here. What can we learn from it? Let's change the process. And so,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
Another thing that I think is underrated, um, is creating space for thinking and dreaming and planning. And you referred to it earlier. So it's one thing that's helped us scale is pulling back, pulling back from some of the day to day not all the time, but at different intervals and different key moments. Sometimes that might look like a 4 hour block. Sometimes it's just a rhythm every day.
Mhm.
But finding some way to step back and, it's almost like you get on the balcony a little bit, you get on the balcony and kind of see your company a little bit.
Yeah,
Versus if you're right on the stage, you're looking literally right around. You can't tell what everything's going on. If you pull back to the balcony, you kind of see all the players, all the dynamics and those things. So
for sure. And I think what you had talked about with the vacations, vacation unplugging, recharging. I always find when I step back, take some time away, like fully away, and then come back, I usually am not only re-energized, but I have some ideas I didn't have before. And usually
absolutely,
those ideas, some of them are pretty good. And you don't get
absolutely,
them when you're just kind of in that cycle.
yeah, that's absolutely true.
And then some of the ideas, my team's like, that's a really stupid idea. I'm like, "So that, you know what, that is actually a really, really stupid idea. But you just kind of come up with a whole lot of ideas and some of them won't be great, and that's good.
Yeah,
Um, okay, so we have job costing, systems and software, org chart, hiring people, creating space. Are we missing any of the primary steps you took to professionalizing?
coaching and networking was huge,
Okay.
and we touched on it already. That's why I didn't really say it yet. But yeah, I think developing that professional network, people that are specifically, it's people that are where you're wanting to head. I think those are great, and people that are in the same spot as you, and eventually, you can kind of give back to people that were, hey, we were at 500 a couple of years ago or whatever, and I remember having to do everything myself and da, da, da. But initially it was who's kind of running alongside us with a similar vision and passion, and who's ahead of us that has that similar vision and passion, and what can I learn from them,
Yeah.
and we're still doing that. I mean, we still do that on a regular basis. And it's just like anything. I mean, painting industry is no different. You've got people that are only after it for the money, or only like, I just want to build something and never work again a day in my life, and that's not my ambition. That's not my drive. And that's fine for them. There's no judgment there. It's just I'm probably not going to learn as much from that person doesn't share my same kind of vision and value sets for the company as from somebody who does, so it's finding those people that do and really learning from them. And then, yeah, being willing to, and this goes to spending money again, being willing to pay for coaching or being willing to pay for marketing, whatever it is, you've
Yeah.
got like being willing to spend. So it's coaching, marketing, whatever those things are, trusting that, man, what I get back from this is going to be more than what I put into it.
Yeah, abundance mindset is very huge. How you think dictates your outcome.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Shane, I love that. Yeah, the coaching and
Absolutely.
networking, it's huge. There's a marketing mastermind group that I'm a part of, and one of the things they preach is look for like the biggest or most successful player in your space. So for you, for the painting, you want someone successful who also had the same values. Maybe it wasn't just about the money or not being a part of the company, uh, but someone who's kind of killing it, right? Um, which there are quite a few in the painting space. We get some
For
pretty
sure.
big players that come to the PCA and stuff like that. And then essentially imitating what they're doing, right? Learning from them. One of the phenomenal things about the painting industry is you go to these events like the PCA and people are so generous with their time. You can go out, you can call them, you can oftentimes go shadow them at the office. I mean, nobody's hiding their secrets. Nobody's like, oh, I figured it all out, but I'm not going to tell you. People are extremely generous, and none of this stuff, like we talked about earlier, it's the fundamentals. It's not rocket science. So kind of monkey see, monkey do, right? They're killing
Yeah.
it, and you're trying to figure out how to kill it.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ask them what they are doing and then do the same thing?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it's super simple, but it's not done that often, and it is hard. It's simple, but it's hard. Like it is going to be hard to go. You get the information, but then you have to implement. It's hard work.
That's yeah. It's funny. I was going to say that. That is a huge key. Is you grab the information and you've got to. And this is where I don't think I was really successful pulling away. And how do we actually implement this?
Yeah,
Let me pull back and take what this resources person has just sent me and actually apply it to our business. How can I step away? And it is harder at a lower revenue when you're wearing more hats. But I wish I'd have done it more. If I'd have done it more, then I would have, we would accelerate, I think, even faster. Not begrudging where we are. I'm very, very, very encouraged, but I do think it would have, like you said, tapped into more of those gifts. Let me give myself space to really think and dream versus just like, I'll pull back just enough to retool this thing just a little bit to where we go a little bit better, you know?
Yeah,
Um, it's almost like sometimes you got to rebuild the engine, you know,
sure. So
and you're
there,
going to have to do that.
there's a lot of people probably know Robert Kiyosaki wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then there's a podcaster I follow, Myron Golden, who's very successful, and he kind of talks about the four quadrants in a different way. But Robert Kiyosaki has the you're an employee, you are self-employed, so that would be like a doctor, oftentimes dentist, veterinary, a lot of them lawyers, a lot of them are self-employed. You are a business owner, or you're an investor. Robert Kiyosaki talks about a business owner, pretty strict definition. I'm not one yet, per this definition. You have to be able to walk away from your business for a year, come back, and it is at the same level or better than when you left it. Now you're a
Hmm.
business owner. So that's a high definition. Um, and then Myron Golden, similarly, he talked about you're an employee working for someone else. You own a job, being the self-employed. So you don't really own a business. If,
Right.
if you're a practitioner and you trade time for money, you own a job, which is where a lot of painting company owners are. If you're a
Correct.
solo operator, you own a job, you're either painting and getting money or you're not. He talks about a business owner is someone who owns a system, which I think is a phenomenal way of looking at it. And if you think about the Robert Kiyosaki definition, if you truly own a system that can run apart from you, you own a process, then you can leave, you can walk away, and the system should be able to run itself. So a business owner being someone that owns a system, and then an investor, similarly investing into other companies. But I think this idea, hey, you need to own a system is so key. And it goes back to what you talked about with the systems and software. This thing should be self-sufficient. And so that's the goal I'm working toward. And that's the goal I think any business owner who wants to be able to scale, who wants to potentially have the option of exiting, who wants to have the option of maybe passing it off to child or whatever they want to do. It just gives you a tremendous amount of optionality if you build this thing so it doesn't need you.
Right. Yeah. Even if your goal is to, I mean, that's my goal. It's not that I don't necessarily want to be a part of it. It's like you said, the opportunity then exists to say, hey, we have a system and there's three large metro areas within the first one's an hour and a half, the other two are like an hour. Maybe we could plop it down there, you know,
Yep.
and it's, you know, can we actually develop the system, you know, to if we say, hey, we believe our system works and we're able to impact people and change lives, and then why wouldn't we want to do more of that, you know?
Sure.
And so yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's what all of us should aspire to. For whatever reason we aspire to it, it's only good, you know.
Yeah, I went to a workshop from Alex Hermosi. I've talked about him a lot, like him a lot. He has a workshop out in Las Vegas that he runs a few times a month um, through his company acquisition.com. And they teach business fundamentals and they invest in companies. They're a private equity firm. But he talked about how you want to build a company to sell. And it doesn't matter whether you want to sell that company or not.
Hmm.
Because if you want to sell it, it gives you the optionality of selling it. If and one of the biggest determiners of whether you can sell the company or not is how needed you are. Right? If
Yeah.
you're super needed, then you can't. No one else can buy it. And if they do buy it, they're buying a job. And so
Right.
that's less attractive. The multiple is not going to be as good. So if you build a company to sell, it gives you the optionality of selling it. It's also just a much better, more enjoyable, more profitable company to own. So I think this idea of, hey, let's build something that can be sellable, that can run without me, doesn't really matter. A lot of people, I think, get turned off by that because they say, well, I don't want to sell a company. Doesn't matter. Wouldn't you love to have a company that is just nice to have?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it comes back to these steps of professionalization.
Well, and if that's the case, I mean, maybe every owner's, you know, other owners are the best thing since sliced bread. I'm not. So the more I can empower my people to be great at what they do and they rise up in their roles, I actually really trust others to be better managers. Then I'm not a very good manager. It's not one of my gifts, you know. So if I can hire, you know, so how can we, as we grow, like you said, that self-sufficient system, that self, you know, propelling, whatever the word, I can't find the right words, but you know, it's kind of running on its own.
Like an independent entity.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be better than me having to be in every single like nook and cranny. Geez,
Yeah.
not just for my sanity, but for sanity, everybody that works with me, you know.
But we're oftentimes so egotistical as entrepreneurs, though. Like, oh, we can do it better
Yes.
than everyone else. That's why we went out and did it ourselves. But then you realize actually when you hire the right people, I mean, I've brought people on board for certain positions. And I'm like, oh, maybe they'll do it near as well as I did it. And then my jaw just hits the floor and I'm just humbled. Wow, I was not as good at that position as I thought that I was.
Well, and it wasn't the only thing you were doing, right? So if you let somebody laser focus on something,
Yeah,
in theory, I mean, yeah, I want to hire
specialists,
people
right?
that are, I absolutely want to hire people that are better than me,
Yeah,
at what they're doing. 100%.
yeah, yeah, I love it. But then sometimes, and I think it's important to note this as well, sometimes there might be a position where, let's say you're phenomenal at sales. You're great at sales, maybe you even love sales, but you want to scale to the point where it really wouldn't make sense for you to be a full-time salesman. And somebody comes in and maybe they're not as good, but if somebody can replace you, free up your time in their 80% is typically the benchmark. If they can do the role 80% as well as you, and it buys back a bunch of your time, then you can accept that. But 80% is kind of that cutoff.
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard that. That makes a lot of sense, and I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good statement.
Shane, this has been awesome. Are there any other steps to professionalizing? Any other things that we should cover?
No, nothing. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more, but those are
Sure.
some of the highlights that worked for us pretty quickly.
I love it, man. Well, I appreciate you, brother. This was a wealth of information. Got into a lot of tactics on this one. So hopefully people derive a lot of information. Again, you can reach out to Shane through the podcast group. Got a few more episodes coming. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you. Look forward to the next one.
If you want to learn more about the topics we discussed in this podcast and how you can use them to grow your painting business, visit paintermarketingpros.com/podcast for free training, as well as the ability to schedule a personalized strategy session for your painting company. Again, that URL is paintermarketingpros.com/podcast. Hey there, painting company owners. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give us your feedback. Let us know how we did. And also, if you're interested in taking your painting business to the next level, make sure you visit the Painter Marketing Pros website at paintermarketingpros.com to learn more about our services. You can also reach out to me directly by emailing me at brandon@paintermarketingpros.com, and I can give you personalized advice on growing your painting business. Until next time, keep growing.